Hey, well, good morning, Keith Jones.
Good morning, Rick. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, thank you. We're getting ready for a ski season pretty soon.
We are. You were on the slopes yesterday. How was it?
It was really beautiful. I was up in Flag. The whole mountain isn't open yet, but there were very few people. It was a beautiful sunny day, no lift lines, no wind. Oh man, it was just great to be out there again. And like your first runs every year, you forget how much cardio fitness you lost since the last time you were on the
Yeah,
mountain.
especially at 8,000 plus feet too, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. The altitude plays a role for sure.
That's awesome. Rick, so do you want to announce today's topic for the show?
Well, I thought what we would do would be talking about something a little different because we don't really recognize this, but there are hidden costs to living a life where you're sort of on autopilot and you're not being mindful. So I thought maybe we'd kick around a few ideas about the importance of mindfulness and how that relates to things in our lives that we may not even be aware of.
I love it. The hidden cost of living on autopilot. I
There
like
you go.
it. Okay.
So what
So why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, I was going to say that from my experience, that the times that I've probably suffered the most, and I didn't realize it, was when I was in a groove and I was so focused on my own needs or focused on an outcome that I needed to have or an expectation that I wanted fulfilled that I couldn't see alternatives or I couldn't see silver linings or I couldn't see other opportunities or I couldn't see how I was hurting other people with my behavior or my lack of goodwill. And so, what I draw from that is that autopilot is something you've got to be very careful of. Now, it's tremendously difficult to try to be at a super conscious level when you're making a left hand turn. You know what I mean? We have to do certain things all the time that are rote that we don't think about and that we can't afford to have the psychic energy spent in that way. And so the trick is to be mindful over what things you are in a rut on, what things you're closed to because you're always doing it a certain way, and what opportunities there might be for things where you don't need to have rote behavior at all, but the circumstance requires you to have a much more complicated, sophisticated evaluation of your circumstance. And in that category, that latter category, what we need to do is to be first recognizing what our role in whatever the circumstances that's troubling you, to find out if there's something that you're doing to cause or contribute to the result that you don't want. And then the second thing is my expectation the real problem here? The real problem of suffering sometimes is just that we're not getting what we want.
Right.
Well, that's a whole different case. That's a whole different way of looking at life. If you're comfortable with the idea that the expectation is something that's a fabrication in your own head, that it's a fabrication that's based on something that you want as opposed to something that may just happen, you have to get used to having a protective device about that. And I think the protective device begins with just monitoring and being aware that expectations sometimes are the major cause of your suffering.
Oh, I totally agree, Rick. I think the whole, living on autopilot, which I've done almost all my life, unaware of it, because I thought, what do you mean I'm living on autopilot? I'm very intentional. I'm going to school. I am going to get a degree. I'm going to study this way. Nothing will stop me. I will pursue this goal, vigorously. Right. And that way, yeah, that's a conscious focus you have. But what about all these other things that are happening that are on autopilot, at least for me? And what was on autopilot was my propensity to see the negative, to complain all the time, to judge other people, to make an enemy of people that disagree with me or had different views. All that stuff was on autopilot. And by being on autopilot and being unconscious to it, I erected these barriers, these limitations. And so what started to happen was I wasn't experiencing the world. I was experiencing my limits of the world. And
Yeah.
so I couldn't go beyond those. And like Mayo Clinic which I love, is just a great place for learning, and on a personal level. You think it's professional, but really what Mayo Clinic has done, man, it has really been a professional laboratory for my own growth. And it's been this great experience. And what I mean by that is that the place is rooted in collaboration, rooted in it. And so you're really not going to get anything done there if you're not a collaborator or that you don't value partnership. Because the minute that you try to do something without it, what you're going to find is that at every step, you need a stakeholder who they're stakeholders at every step. You may not be aware of them because you haven't included them in the process. And when I say included in the process, not just asking them, can I do this, but getting their opinion or their feedback about what you want to do, or asking for their contribution to it along the way in terms of an idea that you have. And sometimes that feedback may be like, no, I don't think it's a good idea, or I don't think it's going to address these things that you haven't, thought about. Or they just say no, or not yet. So for all those reasons, you'll be like you said, you're so attached to your expectations of how something would go. It's going to cause you tremendous suffering because you haven't been mindful. You've gone through this process, the way that you've gone through all your processes before. And up until this point, they've been highly effective in some ways. But there's been some cost along the way because you've gone this way, you've excluded other people. Give me an example. A single-minded focusedness to pursue your career goals. But if you have loved ones around you, are you able to balance and give them the equal attention too? Now, I'm not saying equal attention in terms of quantity of time, but I'm saying equal attention in terms of your presence. Like when the minute, like let's say that you have to spend 70% of your time pursuing your career interest, which may be school or research or whatever the case may be, and you only have 30% of your time here. How's that 30% of your time spent? Is it spent as something on your to-do list that's a nuisance and something that you got to kind of like, okay, I only got 10 minutes for this, and then I got to get back to this other thing over here that is really part of my focus. If that's how you're spending it, you're on autopilot, and we're talking more about quantity and not quality. And so being mindful welcomes in it's embedded in it is quality. Embedded in it is quality. And so what I've learned, Rick, is that when I can live beyond autopilot, right? When I have to actually take the wheel myself, I produce better results, and I'm able to be more collaborative with other people, which I think is really how you affect change and really create something that's lasting in the world. And there are just so many examples of when there's collaboration and where there's not. So at Mayo Clinic, as I talked about, I've had a lot of ideas, right? And they told me from the very beginning, great idea. Why don't you go and get so-and-so and get what they think? I'm like, but that's a great idea. Why do I need so-and-so? Because they are a stakeholder. And like, you want all stakeholders to kick the tires with you, to mull the idea, to go through it with you, to make sure it's sound. Not to mention, if they contribute to it, that increases the likelihood that they're going to be supportive along the way. And it also gives us staying power. But you don't have to do it this way. So we got some daunting tasks that are facing the country and the world. One group, if they go it alone to try to solve this issue, it won't last.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's going to cause incredible suffering.
That's right.
For everybody. Even people that get what they want, the suffering for them is going to be trying to hold on to it with everything they got at the exclusion of everything else that's happening. And the people that don't get what they want, they're going to be suffering because they don't get what they want. But if everybody is not on autopilot, but is consciously contributing to this effort, this problem, other people are going to make you aware of concerning issues that are on the other side of this going through that you may have not thought about or considered. And the same thing is going to happen over here. This group is going to make you aware of some things that you haven't considered. And that's what you really want, because you think this change is for the betterment of everyone, but let's give it a chance of having some staying power. And so I've learned those things, from a change orientation of how I think the world could be better served by everyone seeing the humanity in each other and being really responsible with the planet. But that means not living on autopilot, living beyond that and taking the wheel again.
Yeah. One of the tests I think that's really great for each of our ourselves to go through. And I don't think people do much of this, but one of the ways that I sort of got out of my autopilot was I just tried maybe for one day or for one meeting, let's say if you're in the workplace, or one evening on a date with your loved one, or 1 hour with your kid. Just try this. Try not having an opinion about anything. Try not having an opinion, any kind of an opinion. Just be a blank slate, just for that hour, just for that day, just for that meeting, just for that session, and see what that leads to. Because it's the stakeholder idea that we have in ourselves that, this is the right way. This is the way I've already figured it out. It's the exact opposite of what the scientific method is, which is where you're trying to disprove what you think is the truth, and you get to a higher truth, or you maybe do disprove it and you get something better out of it.
100%.
Yeah. So it not only works in the concept of collaborating in the workplace, but it works in your own head. If you can just give up your opinions and be open to whatever shows up. Now, you may not change your opinion after you have that experience. It may be solidified. Great. That's like the scientific method. You do more testing and it turns out your premises was valid. Great. Or it may turn out that you have a blinding revelation about something you never considered before, and your life is enriched by tenfold. So the idea of autopilot is something that is really, really important to be aware of, to be mindful of the fact that we go through life with these calcified opinions about everything, literally everything, like toilet paper, which side the toilet paper thing should feed. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But it's not about the toilet paper. It's about being right. It's about my expectation of you agreeing with me to make my life work. Well, you can eliminate that whole apparatus if you just decide to get rid of that opinion, because it doesn't matter. Anyway, the idea is just to be mindful of being on autopilot and try to avoid it. I think the best approach in life is to be open-hearted, to be curious, and to let the chips fall, see what happens.
Oh, Rick, I totally agree, man. The toilet paper example is spot on, dude, about like which way it's facing when it comes off the roll. Is it going down or is it going up? Oh my God, man, that is so money. But you're right. I mean, in terms of the stakeholders in the scientific method, if you think this is such a good idea, how do you strengthen it? Take it to somebody who can look at it objectively and tell you like how it can be improved upon or what the flaws are. And it may require you to go back to the drawing board over and over again. But if your vision of something that is going to be worthwhile and a benefit to others, you want them to like tear it apart again. Because every time that they come back with something else that needs to be improved upon or another tweak, it's actually strengthening the idea or strengthening the product is what you want. And I've really, done that with Mayo Clinic. Like I've had this great idea. They're like, oh, somebody's already done that. or really? Like, or you need to talk to this person because they've been working in this field for like 10 years. They got a lot of value to do. To add to it, and you want to go in with an open mind so they can contribute to the idea. And they could have been in the same space as you've been in. But here's what's interesting. When you are invited to do that kind of consideration, to take that next step to get other people to weigh in on it, what you find is you find out about what you said about being right or being attached to your idea. Or are you attached to something that is a higher value for the greater good? So, for example, you have an idea and somebody tears it apart, and you reject that idea because even though their contribution to giving you feedback would actually help greater fulfill what the mission is, right? What the mission is. So, for example, let's say that you are a person who is committed to ending hunger. Let's say this is your thing. You're a person who's committed to ending hunger. And you present this idea, you've done all this work on it, you wrote it up, you present the idea, you go, but you think it's got to be plant-based. I'm vegan, so I hear you. But then they come back, somebody else, they say, hey, listen, just looking at everything that's available, this and that, and where people live and have this, with rain and everything else, it's going to have to be a hybrid. It's going to have to be, some of it's going to have to be meat. Some of it's going to have to be this. You'd be like, no, we're not doing it that way. So you'd rather have people still go starving so you can be right about your idea.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? That's
a great example.
And you can do it for racism. You can do it for law enforcement. You go down the list, education. You can do all of it. And then you find out, what do you really care about? You say you care about this, but it's going to be, but the real answer is a hybrid solution, but you can't you can't let go of your idea. And I had that happen to me when I was doing like wellness work. Some people came to me and said, hey, Keith, these are services that you don't offer. We want to we want to go in, and we still want to work with you, but we want to go somewhere else for these other areas. I felt this is years ago. I felt my ego pop up like, no, I want to be all things to you, everything like this. Like, no, that's not your goal. You want to share. You everybody who can contribute to this person's well-being, the more the merrier. I want everybody to do it. And at the end, if they end up doing a better job than I can, I care about the person, not about what's in it for me. Man, that's a tough road for a lot of people. And I remember coming up to that crossroads and having to make a choice. Which one am I going down to? I say I care about people, but it's that conditional. I care about people when I'm the one who's doing all the servicing of them.
And getting the strokes. Getting the strokes,
exactly. Or do I care about people so much that whatever their source is, whoever can provide the care that will help them be in a better position. So, I mean, I had to get off autopilot, Rick. I had to take over the wheel, so thank you.
It's not easy. Like the things we talk about in the show all the time, it's not easy because it's always involving some level of ego. I mean, an ego is an important self-defense mechanism, but it has to be understood and given its proper role. And its proper role in solving problems is to go away.
Absolutely. Now for self-interest, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, that's right.
It's great.
Right. Now, self-interest.
Now, because it's going to come with suffering. It's going to come from suffering, But it'll get you there. The cost may be great, but it'll get you there. Rick, thank you so much, man. I love you.
I love you. Hey, take it easy going across that Golden Gate Bridge tonight, will you?
I will, man. The wind out here it's a bear. It's quite windy, but I'm not complaining about it, Rick. I'm accepting it.
Boy, that's a good way to go, man. Adios, Keith.
Adios.